stream should be transitioned, and we are starting and I'm sorry, Ben, the consensus layer call number 71. Great. So we will focus, I think, a lot on Altair today, as usual. Then we'll do some client updates. We can do a quick merge discussion, although we had quite a merge discussion over the past hour on the engine API. Then research updates and any closing remarks, spec discussion, etc. V110 beta 3 is now out, and the test vectors are being uploaded currently. I will try to keep, I have to upload each file of those tar GZs independently or GitHub dies. So I will do them one at a time during this call, and hopefully they'll be done at the end of the call. Thank you for your patience on that, and huge shout out to Alex for greatly increasing test coverage. So hopefully some good stuff will come out of that. Cool. Well, so that was the beginning of Altair. We do have a new release. There's some other goodies in there with the merge and sharding, if you're following along on those. And Piermont upgraded 1 week ago, and we do have some coordinated testing going on that. I believe today we should be turning finality back on. It looks like some of y'all have begun to do that. We're back at 60%. We've been non-finalizing for 702 epochs. Very cool. And there are a number of other things that we'd like to get on there, specifically get a bunch of deposits, get a bunch of exits, make sure we have all the different slashing types covered, and do weird things to your heart desire. We have, is there anything on Piermont testing that we'd like to discuss? There's an issue.
Right. So for full transparency, we did run into an issue where the Prism could not sync under unfinalized period, but the issue was quickly fixed and patched, and then we got a new release out. So yeah, personally, I'm really grateful for this type of test that allow us to catch issues like this.
Was it a fresh sync that you had issues? So like trying to start up, or
it's more like a checkpoint sync, and then if you checkpoint sync for such duration with the epoch that's not finalized, for some reason we couldn't process the block. But yeah, let me post the issues here, and the details are in the issues. But yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. And I mentioned this elsewhere, but we are looking into doing a more concerted effort to do scenario type testing in real large but kind of controlled test nets. This is just a bit of a taste of that. Hopefully we can get some of that going over the next couple of months to harden Altair stuff and to get ready for merge. Great. Any other on Piermont? I think technically once we do finish running through at least what I shared in that issue 59 on E2 networks, we will consider it deprecated. Obviously you can do whatever you want with it. You can continue to run nodes and see what happens, or call it a day. And I think as we approach the merge, we would spin up a pretty sizable testnet against each of the ETH1 testnets that we want to keep, and do kind of a merge practice on each one of those. I guess even regardless of wanting to keep them, but we can discuss that later. Okay, Prater will launch in 1 week minus 2 hours, I believe. There is a config up. It was merged. If you haven't taken a look, please do a final sanity check on that. If you are listening to this call, keep an eye peeled for Prater Altair releases on your client of choice, and upgrade if you are on that testnet. As we approach that 1 week from today, is any comments or questions on Prater? Perry, you're going to work on upping the validators on Prater. Can you give us a quick on that?
Yeah, I've just reached out to all the client teams to figure out who's going to be taking part in that, and I'm just creating a small doc to figure out who would have to turn on the validators on which date. I guess I do the deposits over the weekend or early next week, and should hear more from me next week.
Got it. So obviously after Prater, we do want to target a mainnet launch. I think we have a handful of things in the works. These continued Paramount testing, seeing Prater go well, and also probably not. Well, I guess we could turn off finality if we want. I think there's a marginal gain in doing that, but hitting it with operations and different things. And the test vectors that just came out, hoping that doesn't uncover anything crazy. And then I think we need to be eyeballing a mainnet launch. I don't think that we need to set a date today. I think we should get through what happens in a week and then set a date. But any thoughts, feelings, desires with respect to mainnet timing?
Main thing is that we give people plenty of time to upgrade between when we announce it and get releases out to when it actually happens. We will depend on the community for this one.
Right.
Whereas for Piermont and Prada, we've controlled them all.
Absolutely. And we can certainly do EF blog posts with all releases and things like we do on, have done on the proof of work chain. What do you think sufficient time is there? Sorry, Yasser, what was that?
I know. I was going to pose a different question, which is basically, we've been considering whether to make two releases before mainnet Altair or just one release, like a big one with a bunch of features and stuff, and then just a small one with, an epoch update, or two releases. And I'm kind of curious what people think about that.
So I think Lighthouse has probably done a version of that, and that they just put 1.5 out officially last week, which I think was a big release, and then Altair obviously would just be something more minor with an epoch. But as we approach, my intuition would be doing a release within 7 days of each other or something like that might cause more confusion than it's worth, but I don't know.
I'm pretty keen to see each client have an actual release with the Prada config in it rather than an RC or so on. How that ties into big features for you is kind of a side effect, but actually have Altair merge the main branch. It's a full release that clients are upgrading to, because then it's ready. The one change you have to put in for mainnet is just a config change, which hopefully you can't screw up. Whereas anything else is kind of merging and doing other kind of more complex stuff. It's much easier to introduce other bugs and then effectively haven't tested it. So that's kind of my view on it. I'd lean towards whatever gets you to there. But beyond that, users are pretty slow to upgrade unless you tell them this is going to completely break if you don't upgrade. So I think it's really just going to come down to when you put out the release that says, this has got the mainnet fork in it. You have to upgrade. That's when a lot of users are going to actually pull the trigger and apply it.
Back to the prior question, Adrian. Do you have, or you or any others have an opinion on when those releases, or the lead time between those releases being made and getting into a public blog post and that fork date? Is that a 2-week minimum, 3-week minimum, more?
I'd say 2-week minimum, but I'd be very tempted to learn from what the ETH1 side has done and what kind of timelines they normally set, because I think that's the expectation most users will probably have.
Right.
It's a good baseline anyway.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, looking at London, Guess had releases like what, a few days before.
Well, that is very true, but that was also handling an exceptional scenario. I wonder when the initial blog post went out on the lead time, though. we can figure out probably quickly.
Yeah, I mean, emergencies happen, and you can get it upgraded fast. Probably the best example of that was when the first Constantinople fork got cancelled, and it was 24, 48 hour time turnaround
Right.
on getting new clients out to cancel it, and it went very smoothly. So it is possible to do fast, but
Yeah, and I think we might not cover all of this in Altair, but I think there's a desire to define a bit more clearly what the finding bugs and disaster scenarios and things like that are, especially leading to the merge. Rather than very subjectively being, we're fine, defining a bit more clearly what our like halt scenarios are. Although once you publish those mainnet releases.
For some reason, I had it just in my head is a month after we fork Prada, so like a month from next Thursday. That probably could happen quicker, I guess, if we wanted to, but I'm not sure that I think it seems like we're pretty much there in terms of engineering. It's just kind of waiting for it now, and perhaps giving like a little bit of extra time for people to move over and a little bit of extra time for us to run these test nets is good. I'm not sure that. Like at least for us, it seems I'm not sure we need a deadline to push us at the moment. We're pretty much there. That deadline was the test nets. So
yeah, I mean, that puts us at the last day of September, which I think is a pretty good target, and then we need to subtract probably 2.5 weeks on mainnet releases and 2 weeks on really getting that blog post out, which I think is, looking at the calendar, that all adds up in a pretty reasonable way, assuming that we don't run into any unexpecteds.
What's the subtraction on the blog post, sorry?
I just meant, if we're going to do mainnet on September 30th, which would be exactly 1 month after the Prouder upgrade, subtract 2.5 weeks on the like deadline for mainnet releases and the blog post going out a couple days from there. So like, the September 13th would be everyone needs to have their mainnet releases out, and then the blog post is coming out the 14th or 15th, which gives slightly more than 2 weeks of lead time. Otherwise, you'd have to do mainnet releases the week prior, and if you were trying to get the blog post out in like 3 weeks time.
All right, because you want the blog post to have the client versions in it, is that right?
That is historically what has been done on the mainnet upgrades on the proof of work chain. Yes.
I suspect that timeline will work well. We can probably pick a candidate upgrade epoch around the time prior to forks, and then agree on it not long after, once we see it's working, basically. That starts the release processes and kind of gives, should pan out.
Yeah, I feel the same, that let's wait for the product release before we make that decision. Also because the latest test vectors were released today.
Yeah, cool. I'm comfortable with our abstract tentative plans, and we can pick this up in 1 week time. Okay, anything else we want to discuss with respect to Altair planning? Anything that is glaringly missing from all of this? Or we generally have the pieces in place that we're happy with? Cool. The minimal tar.gz is on the spec test release now, and now the general is. But now I'm going to have to add the mainnet, which should take a few minutes. If anybody, bonus points to anybody that runs minimal on their local build before the end of the call. Okay, back to the schedule. Let's do a quick round of client updates. I suspect it has a lot to do with Altair. No need to hit us too hard, but we can start with Nimbus.
Hi. As you said, a lot of Altair upgrades, especially performance improvements to make the blocks between slots and also epochs way faster. And also REST API updates as well.
Great. Grandine.
Yes, this is Solus from Grandina team. So we still work mainly on this separate forks running on separate runtimes thing. And even though we pass all this Altair tests, however, there are still a lot of work that needs to be done in order to connect everything into one piece as running in the separate runtimes. It comes with a different with a new challenges really. For example, just an example to understand the complexity. When the Altair runtime starts to work, it needs to get the history before the merge, before the fork point, in order to have fork choice working. So basically, the initial idea that we thought that after the merge we will not after the fork that will not have any history of the previous fork. It's not actually valid, as we need to have at least some history to make a fork choice on the Altair runtime work. So we are solving a lot of these interesting issues.
Great. Thank you. And Lodestar.
Hey everyone, Lion here. So finally we have released our browser Light Lion prototype. Super excited, had very good reception and looking forward to add more transports next. We have also hacked an alternative representation of bytes in JavaScript, which has allowed us to reduce the size of the hashing cache by half. And it's been great to reduce garbage collection performance. Pyrmon went well, and we are looking next week allocating a portion of our team to implement the merge and hopefully having it ready soon. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that, I think it maybe goes without saying, but on the execution engine side, I think people are expecting to be heavily in kind of prototyping over the next month, and so beginning to shift a bit of allocation on your side to implement the latest on consensus layer merge specs will help unblock the other side of the aisle. Cool, great. And Prism.
Yep. Hello, everyone. So last 2 weeks, we've been mostly reviewing Altair changes and merging those changes into the develop branch. And then, as you know, last Friday there was a minor incident with the Lido validators. So I think they were proposing blocks fairly late, and due to that, we found a few deficiency with how we handle attestation mempool. So first, we were not reinserting orphan attestation back to the mempool, and that is fixed. And then we found another deficiency where we did the attestations when a block gets verified, instead of block becomes canonical. So we also fixed that as well. And on top of that, we're just working on E2 API and then gearing for the V2 release. Yeah, that's it.
Great. Teku.
Yeah, hi, this is Adrian. So we've got a release, should be coming out tomorrow. It's just doing the final kind of staging process. At the moment, that will be 21.8.2, and it will have the Altair upgrade epoch baked in for Prata. It'll also have some really nice optimizations, particularly around reducing garbage collection time, so lower CPU and memory usage. And we've done a bunch of research with Teku working against, particularly in Fura, but anywhere you have load balanced beacon nodes. And so there's a new option to disable producing early attestations because it's quite common to get from one node a head event saying they have the block, and then you produce the attestation against a different node and it doesn't have it yet. So you wind up with a bad head vote. So we've seen performance dramatically improved against load balanced beacon nodes and Infura with that option. So that's in there. And it will also include a change for the remote signer API so that we can send Altair blocks through to things like Web3 signer, which is a block V2 type. So we'll get the REST API specs for Web3 signer updated with that. But yeah, that should be good to get. Should be good to go with the Prada then, hopefully. And that's it from us.
Great. And Lighthouse.
Hello everyone, Paul here. So this week we released version 1.5.0. It seems to be going well. There's a couple of reports of missed like a lowered attestation performance happening, but I'm not sure if that's just limited to Lighthouse or it's network wide. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's going on there. We have a 1.5.1 release scheduled for Monday. That's going to include our Prada, the Prada fork. So 1.5.0 means that we have all of our Altair stuff in master now. We're also started working on remote signer support for Web3 signer, which is what Adrian from Teku mentioned just before. So that means I believe that Lighthouse and Teku will both be able to support the same remote signer from their VC, which would be pretty cool. Our week's subjectivity progress is going well. We've done some successful starts and backfills. Now we're just working on getting review ready, ready for production. And that's it from me.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Okay, and number 3, merge discussion. If there's anything people want to chat about, by all means. I think we hit the engine API pretty hard this morning, so I would defer additional conversation on that to Discord and some follow-up conversations rather than doing it here. But are there any other merge related items we'd like to discuss today?
Yeah, I have some. Yeah, we decided to continue our engine API discussion during the next Allcore Devs call.
Great.
Spend a bit of time on it. Yeah, with regard to other stuff on the merge, there is the post by Dimitri, who has been evaluating the precision of the terminal total difficulty computation that we will use for the actual transition from proof of stake to proof of work. A bit of a context, this terminal total difficulty is going to be computed during the merge fork, and it targets the 7 days after the merge fork is happening for the actual transition to proof of stake. And this research is about evaluating the precision of this prediction on the historical data. Yeah, the key takeaway from it is that we might want to use more precise value for the seconds per proof of work block than the 14 seconds which are used currently. It will increase the precision of this. It will make the prediction more accurate. You may take a look at the comment below this post for the comparison table. But yeah, it will make it more accurate, but the precision is we should expect the merge within the 20 hours interval, which will be around this target time, which is 7 days according to the current spec. So this is because of the the difficulty fluctuations and because of the stochastic process that we have to drive the block building on the proof of work chain. I don't think we can do anything better here. And as I understand, we have the London hard fork slightly after the predicted time. Am I right?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Anyway, so there is 20 hours interval, but we might move this interval and to make it more accurate if we change this these seconds per block parameters. So I would suggest to add like a new parameter to the spec and to get back to evaluating the average block time as we are close on the historic data, as we're close to the merge and settle with some value that will be adequate to the state of the network by that time. So that's just a suggestion.
Got it. I just realized one confounding factor might be if we are approaching an ice age, which may be the case.
Yes, and we do want to approach the ice age, right?
Right.
Towards the merge. So we should take care about it as well.
Yeah, okay.
That's all for this boost. Take a look at it. It's just nice, like collection of statistics data. And thanks to Nethermind team who provided us with data from the mainnet for this research.
Cool. Thank you, Mikhail. Any other merge related items we'd like to discuss? Okay. It looks like there will be some continued refinements that come out of enter into that engine API over the next couple of weeks, so keep your eyes peeled. And like I said, as Altair wraps up getting merge prototypes that are in the direction of the current merge specs and the EIP that is up will help move things forward. Okay, cool. Any research updates people would like to share today? Okay. And any spec discussion, open discussion, closing remarks?
I've been asked to mention something in the configs about the temporarily set fork versions, how people would feel about nulling them. I don't know the background for this, so I can't make an argument to it, but I'm doing what I'm asked. There is an issue for this. Okay. I'll find it.
Yeah, sorry. What? Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. There's a issue on the consensus specs 2569. It's about using null instead of U64 max value. Sorry, 2 to the 64 minus 1. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if people would be against that.
I'd like to see more just the justification here. I think the justification, at least from I can see, is better clarity. I think the alternative argument is that you don't have to have any exceptional logic because you can just use your basic comparison operator and not really worry about what the value is. I don't feel strongly here, but does anyone else want to jump in, or shall we just move to the issue?
Perhaps we can just move to the issue. I'm going to ask people to put some more justification there. I feel like it doesn't warrant it at the moment. Sorry for bringing it up.
Oh, no, it's good. Take a look. Issue 2569. Okay, Snowman is going off in the chat. YouTube chat, having a conversation. Okay, cool. I think that we are good. Anything else?
I have a question concerning the peer ID. When the nodes update their client, it seems that the peer ID changes to a new one, and I would like to know why is this? Is there a particular reason why this is like this, or is just arbitrary decision?
Update as in change their client version, or just like cycle their node? And is this all clients or just a couple you're seeing?
I'm not sure about all clients. I noticed that in a couple of them, and yeah, update like if they get a different a new ID, and because of that, it's difficult to track you know, the evolution of new versions rolling out. So we have been using the crawler to see how you know, people adopt new versions and how this evolves. But the thing is that what we see in the figure is that when a new version, for example, a new version comes up, we just see kind of an increase. So we see the new version, a lot of nodes getting up the new version, but we just see a lot of new nodes. And we don't see a decrease on the older ones. And this is because I think they changed the ID, and then it's difficult to track. You know, we just see them as new nodes. We don't see like, oh, this node just changed from a previous version to another version. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we explicitly change peer ID for every restart for privacy reasons. Like, there's no reason to keep it the same. And like, by changing it, at least we casually break the link between beacon node and validator every now and then. We've actually considered for every connection. And the other thing, the last thing about crawlers that I'll say is that we don't, when our peer table is full, like when we have all the connections that the user has configured it to have, we will no longer accept connections on the socket even. So we won't allow the crawler to come in. So those are like common sources of why strong crawlers might be skewed in general.
In Lighthouse, we persist our peer ID.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very reasonable to keep that as an optional design to be able to cycle or persist. And it's unfortunately probably on the impetus of the crawler to figure out what is stale and what is not, because I think there are very valuable privacy considerations for wanting to be able to cycle and move things around.
Yeah, Peter from Geth, I think at DevCon Prague, did a really interesting talk about tracking himself around the world by his peer ID. So it's definitely a privacy leak.
Right. And I do, y'all have no, you don't have a target and a max so that you can accept inbound connections and then kind of like prune them back down. There's just a strict max.
Well, we have a strict max for the simple reason that every time we accept a connection, we have to negotiate a key with those new connections. So that is actually one way to DOS a client. It's just like keep opening connections. And we kind of want to save those resources. So when the connection table is full, it's full. I mean, we're not going to be talking to these people anyway. We've considered softening that. But again, like the only one that benefits is crawlers. And again, you're like leaking a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine an extreme where you have like a lot of network rigidity and it's difficult to join if everyone was following this strategy, as opposed to, say, target 50, max 55, allowing you to grow up to 55 and then like having some pruning strategy, which could still potentially handle the DOS as long as your pruning strategy wasn't really aggressive and you could always open new connections. But anyway, I don't think there's a strictly correct behavior here.
Well, even there, right? You'd still get pruned, right? Presumably.
Well, sure.
You can't do anything.
Your pruning strategy would depend on some sort of heuristic algorithm, which then all of a sudden becomes potentially a Eclipse attack vector, depending on if somebody can find an exploit in that algorithm.
I think it's a tension between you want to rotate clients to prevent like Danny said, to prevent the network from being too rigid and getting stuck with, no one new can join because you have everybody's at max. And on the other side, you want to prevent Eclipse attacks, which definitely get opened up a lot if you allow, if you have a well-known strategy for rotating clients, people can exploit that to force their own nodes to get rotated in and other nodes rotated out. It's not easy.
The flip side there, though, is that it's much easier to eclipse you if I can just fill your connections when you first appear.
And you can never
just
get
be the first ones to connect to you, and then you never connect to anyone else, and I own you forever.
Yeah, so like we do two things to balance. So one thing is that we have quite a high peer limit compared to the others, 160-ish. And this works well because Gossip Sub itself, which is like the bandwidth hog, manages its own bandwidth usage through the mesh, right? So having lots of peers connected doesn't really affect bandwidth that much. And then there is a peer scoring system in place where we occasionally kick peers that are not pulling their weight. So at the end of the day, we still have some dynamic behavior. It's just that the moment that it's full, we no longer spend resources on new pairs until we have determined that some pair is useless.
But if we update the PRID so frequently, doesn't this damage a little bit the peer scoring algorithm?
Well, both ways, right? It forgets penalties, and it depends. Like, we can't assume that others will remember our peer scores across connections. So we start with a clean slate with a new peer ID, and we work on that reputation, right? And the reason is, I think Guest does also drop peer reputation on this connect, if I remember right, and they motivated this with the fact that the moment that you restart, something completely different might be happening, even if it's the same peer ID connecting. So there's it's difficult to reason about security and peer score.
Right, it goes both ways. You could have fixed a bug in your client that made your peer score bad, or you could have made your client malicious, trying to leverage what was previously a good score. But you could also make that change to move towards maliciousness without cycling. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Leo, I think there's something at odds here fundamentally. There are. It's not always in the best interest of a client to make things easy for a crawler because of privacy issues and other types of issues. And so I think as a crawler, you have to try to just navigate the emergent landscape.
Absolutely. No, I completely understand, and we will figure out a way to just discard the connections that we don't see for a certain time, and we will figure it out. I just wanted to bring up the discussion a little bit to understand. And another thing, just to remind, please, all the clients about the standardization approach, effort that we are doing, so that because we are trying to start building these dashboards with all the standard metrics that we agreed on. So just keep an eye on that, so that the next releases have all those metrics using the standard metric, naming system that we are open on. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Anything else people like to discuss before we close today?
Regarding this ID thing, if I understand correctly, so actually the benefit for the client is to keep this ID and to keep the the score, and I'm not sure. I mean, if this is the suggestion to make this optional or mandatory to roll these IDs?
I mean, the suggestion is that you choose for your users or you let them choose.
Mm-hmm.
There are reasons for both. We allow both because, for example, when you're running a boot node, a stable node that some users presumably trust, the peer ID is also used as a source for the public key that verifies that you're connecting to the node that you think you're connecting. So when you have a trust relationship between two nodes, for example, you run yourself two nodes and want to make sure they're connected, obviously you need to keep the peer ID. But on the other hand, there's a privacy issue. So, I mean, right now in the network design, the most private thing we can do is actually use a different peer ID for every connection that we open. And that is an extreme option that I don't think any client does right now, but it's certainly a possibility. It would cost a little bit in terms of DHT lookups and like it would be a little bit more difficult, but it's certainly possible.
Mm. But this issue mainly raised because of the crawlers, or somebody asked for the increased privacy.
It was discussed at early stages what to do about the casual link between beacon node and validator. The main issue is that if you know which validator is using which beacon node, you can trivially DOS them in a targeted attack. And then if they don't have a good backup strategy, then potentially you can like at low cost graft grief individual validators basically.
Yeah, just disconnect them from the network. Okay. Okay, thanks.
I just mentioned that changing peer ID is not foolproof. It's not secure in that sense. It's just a tilt in that direction.
All right. Okay. Other items people would like to discuss? Great. Prater in 1 week. If you're listening, keep your eyes peeled for releases that include these updates, and you can join us on the testnet fork. Talk to y'all soon. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Sure.
Thanks, Jerome.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.